Red Dice Diaries podcast, a rambling journey through the wonderful world of RPGs by a long-time GM and player. The music at the start of this podcast is Shinigami by Tarek, used under Creative Commons license. Okay, so recently I've been thinking a little bit about 5th edition, prompted mainly by some online conversations and some talks with Johannes Pavela. He's getting very enthusiastic for 5th edition at the minute, and we've been discussing a campaign he's talking about starting at some point in the future. Now, I've also been thinking of my own setting, which originally was going to be sort of system neutral, but after our conversation, that got me thinking a little bit about 5th edition. Now, as you know, I'm a massive fan of OSR gaming, and in the main, for me, certainly one of the great appeals of it is the simplicity of it. Now, it occurred to me that, well, surely it'd be possible to achieve that level of simplicity with the D&D 5th edition rules, effectively by just stripping out a load of the added complexity and the extra rules that were put in there. Now, you might say to yourself, well, why would you bother doing that? Why not just run 5th edition, or why not just run OSR? And the reason for that is because I'm quite fond of the whole roll a d20, add a modifier, try and beat the difficulty number mechanic. I think as a core mechanic, it's a very solid, intuitive system that makes a great deal of sense. And it's certainly one of my favourite systems, going all the way back to sort of 3.0, 3.5, I think, when it first started being used in that sort of format. And I think it's a great idea. Now, I'm a big fan of systems where they have like a single core mechanic and they don't add in a lot of different subsystems to sort of deal with different situations, because I feel that sort of adds a bit of confusion. And I think that if a core mechanic's strong enough, it should be able to be flexed and be adapted without having to add in new systems wholesale. So it occurred to me that we could get rid of a lot of the different classes if we rated their previous abilities as skills instead. So for instance, instead of having a character who's a mage, you might buy levels in a magic skill, and that would determine how many spells you had, what your spell difficulty was, etc. Instead of being a fighter and getting combat bonuses for that, you might have combat skills related to different families of weapons, I don't know, swords, axes, bows, whatever, and your combat bonus would be based on the skill that you have in that. So instead of going, oh, I'm rolling a d20, I'm adding a base attack bonus plus whatever else I get from my class, trying to beat the AC of my opponent, you just say, right, I'm rolling a d20, I'm adding my skill in swords, bladed weapons, whatever you want to call it, trying to beat my opponent's AC. If I do that, I roll the damage and everything proceeds as normal. If I don't, I've missed. If I was going to cast a spell, you might say, okay, well, for each skill rank you've got, you might say you have so many spells available, or you have access to certain levels of spells that you cast as normal. So I think that'd be workable. And then what I'd have is I'd just have a basic sort of level progression where for every amount of XP you go up a level, and for each level you get a certain number of skill points you can spend to increase your ranks in various skills. So if you want to play like a big powerful mage, you might pump loads of your skill points into spell casting or whatever we decide to call the skill. If you want to be more of a warrior type, you might pump all of your points into weapons and stuff like that. If you want to be a more non-specialist sort of character, you might spread them about a little. But I think that'd be quite a nice way of actually doing that. Now, I'm sure someone out there has probably already done this, you know, the whole thing about there being no ideas new under the sun, but it's something I quite fancy giving a go and seeing if I can make it as compatible with existing 5th edition stuff as possible without making it too ridiculously over complex. So that's a project I'm going to be doing in the future. Another project I'm planning on working on is a campaign setting, sort of sponsored by the idea of Larry Niven's Ringworld Engineers, etc., that I've been thinking about a fair bit recently and I've read before. The whole idea of Ringworld being that the characters come from a sort of sci-fi society. They then go to this ring world, this artificial habitat in space, where people are living on it in a sort of more feudal style society who aren't aware that they're on this big chonking space station. Now, what I want to do, since being a big fan of sort of like 40k and sort of grimdark future and stuff like that, I effectively want to create a campaign which allows you to use all of the standard fantasy races or variants thereof and use your favourite old school rules, 5th edition, whatever, and run a campaign that takes place on a wrecked terraforming vessel, effectively. It was sent out ages and ages ago to a distant planet, the plan being that it would land, deploy its terraforming equipment, transform the planet into a beautiful paradise. All of the colonists would then make their merry way out, and here is a new Eden, happy days. Now, obviously, because it's the background for a role-playing setting, that hasn't happened. The idea will be that the ship suffered a damage or some sort of loss, it landed or crashed, and the equipment wasn't deployed entirely properly. So outside of the bounds of this huge spaceship, and we are talking about a huge one since it would have like an entire biosphere inside it, outside of this is this toxic, poisonous atmosphere. And the campaign setting would actually be the society or societies that have evolved in this crashed vessel over the millennia, the hundreds and hundreds of years since it originally crashed on the planet. Now, I'm probably going to be talking a little bit more about that in future podcasts, but that's something else I'm working on at the moment. In terms of the Midderlands adventure, Behind the Walls, that I've been working on with the excellent Glyn Seal, author of the Midderlands campaign setting, I've pretty much done my writing. I've done all the writing for that. Glyn has been sending me updates on the excellent artwork he's producing for it, the excellent cartography, and seeing what he's been able to do with the sort of really rough sketch maps I gave him shows that his Any award is entirely well deserved. There's some great stuff I've been seeing, and I've only been seeing the sort of in progress stuff that he's been doing. The adventure focuses around the discovery of some mysterious ancient coins in a small village, the effect that wealth has on the village, and exploring these ancient Goman ruins to find out exactly what's going on there. But obviously, as it's an adventure, there's more going on than initially meets the eye. Now, obviously, we haven't got an exact schedule for that, but I know both myself and Glenn have been working very hard on it. That's hopefully going to be coming out in softcover print format and PDF at some point. So I'll keep you apprised of that as and when I know more. I know that Glyn's feverishly working away on it. And thanks very much, Glyn, for sending me the regular updates. And I've said thanks on the emails, but again, thank you very much. I really can't wait to see the final version of that, and hopefully myself and Glenn will be able to work together on similar projects in the future. It really has been a thoroughly enjoyable experience working with him. So that's what I'm up to at the moment. Hopefully, now I've got a couple of writing projects out of the way, I'll be able to, as well as starting other stuff, start producing podcast entries on a more regular schedule again. So that's it for this episode. If you have any questions or suggestions for things you'd like to see in the podcast in future, please either email them to reddicediaries@gmail.com or drop me a voicemail at Anchor. Until I see you next time, wherever you're playing, take care and enjoy yourselves.